So now let's extend what we learned in working with the planned backorder situation with deterministic demand to the case where we have probabilistic or stochastic demand. And we're going to focus initially on the simplest model, and that is the news vendor problem, or the single period inventory model. So let's start and look at our assumptions. So for the single period models that we're going to develop here, we made a couple changes on the assumptions. The first is the demand. Instead of constant and known demand, we are now variable and it's random. Because we have random demand, there's going to be a higher probability that I might have excess demand. I'll be short. So what will we do with those short cases? Well, we'll have lost orders. And then finally, the big change we're making for this model, the single period, is we're moving away from an infinite planning horizon to one where it's a single period. So my planning is going to be for one selling period where I need to make a decision for how much to order ahead of time, and I cannot replenish within that time period. So this is what's known as the news vendor problem. And so let's expand on this by working through an example. This example is based off of a thesis from 2004. And what the situation is, there's a company, it's called Reebok, and in 2002, they gained the sole rights to sell replica NFL jerseys. These are jerseys that are sold to fans, and in the United States, the National Football League, or NFL, is one of the most popular sports. It's a professional sport. It's American football. There's 32 teams. Each team has about 50 players. And fans of one of these teams they like to buy the jerseys to show that they're part of a member of that team. And so here the picture, this is Tom Brady of the New England Patriots, and you see his jersey number 12. Well, people would like to go buy a number 12 New England Patriots jersey with Brady written on the back. All the jerseys have unique names and numbers, so there's a higher number of SKUs. And the way these things are sold, there's a peak time, and it's right at the end of summer before the fall season starts, and it's about 8 weeks, and that's where the majority of the jerseys are sold. Now, when they have these jerseys made, it's made from a contract manufacturer, and it takes about 12 to 16 weeks to complete that order because it's done overseas. So you see the problem here is that they have to place an order 16 weeks out, and they only have an 8-week period to sell. So therefore, this is a single period problem. And so the issue is that Reebok has to commit to an order for the quantity for each player, for each team, ahead of time, while the actual demand that arises during that 8-week selling period is totally uncertain. So they can't react within the selling period. If one of the jerseys starts selling really well, they can't suddenly order more, or vice versa, they can't lower an order during that selling period. And so the question that Reebok has is, how many of these jerseys of each player should they order? Now this might sound like a really specialized problem, but it isn't. This problem is very common. It's not unique. And it's called the news vendor problem because it originally arose from the idea of someone who sells newspapers, where every day they would go and buy a certain number of newspapers from the plant and sell them on the street. At the end of the day, any extra newspapers they had, they would have to eat them and throw them away. They couldn't sell the papers tomorrow. No one wants to buy yesterday's newspaper. And also during the day, if there were more people wanting their papers, they couldn't replenish. So the news vendor problem is essentially the classic single period inventory problem. And the way you can classify these, it's any time where you have a firm who has to make a bet on how much they order, a Q star, over a certain fixed single period where they can't replenish, and there's uncertain demand during that period. So let me give you some more data here for this problem. The cost of the jerseys that Reebok had to pay was about $10.90. They sold them to retail outlets for about $24 a jersey. And they forecasted the demand over the 8-week selling period to be about 32,000 jerseys. This is for Tom Brady's jerseys. With a standard deviation of 11,000, and they noticed that it was normally distributed. So what they wanted to do was to find the Q star, right, the order quantity that would maximize their profit. Notice this is different from everything we've done with EOQ. With EOQ, we're looking to minimize cost. Here, we're maximizing profit. And what's our profit function? Well, it's simply going to be this P, the purchase price, times the minimum of either the amount of demand that shows up or the Q, the amount that I ordered. Right? I can't sell any more than I ordered, and I can't sell any more than what's demanded. So the minimum of those two quantities will be the amount that I can sell. And then I'm going to subtract off of that the cost times the Q, which is the amount that I'm ordering. Now the challenge is we don't know what this X is. It's a random variable. That's the trick. So how do I determine the best policy? Well, what we're going to do in the next couple videos is show two different ways. I'll start off with a data table, then we'll go into marginal analysis. So let's get started with the data table next.